Welcome to episode number 185 of the Resilient Retail Game Plan. Hi, I'm your host, Catherine Erdley. Before we get started, I'd love to invite you to head over to retailroar.co.uk. That's retail, ROAR.co.uk, and get your free ticket for our amazing free online summit. We have the best of the UK's entrepreneurs ready to share their story about how they went from their parents' basement or their back room, spare room, kitchen table to being one of the UK's fastest growing companies, having a global brand or having a multi-million pound turnover. You aren't going to want to miss these stories. I'm so excited to share them with you. Plus, we have 8 amazing experts ready to share their thoughts about how product businesses, e-commerce brands, independent retailers and boutiques, bricks and mortar stores, anybody who sells product, what they need to think about getting ready to spring into 2024. So go check it out, retailraw.co.uk. But on to today's episode, we are joined by Hayley Watts, who is a coach and facilitator, and she's going to be talking about something that a lot of people I know find tricky, and that is how do you manage your team? How do you grow a productive team? And how do you look after your health and well-being as a founder?
Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow, or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Erdley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing: breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch, and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business.
Hi, Hayley. Welcome to the podcast. Do you want to start by introducing yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Hayley. I work with corporate businesses to help people to be more productive, to know that they're focusing on the right thing, and working with small business owners to help them do a similar thing, give them some external accountability, bit of a sounding board often for people's ideas. You know, when you're got a small team or you're working on your own, it can be hard when you're in your head. So helping people to get out of their heads and focus on the work that's going to move them forwards.
Amazing. Fantastic. So let's start with productivity. One of the hardest things, I think, when I talk to people whose businesses are growing, one of the hardest things for them as a founder is actually make the business more productive as the team grows, which might sound counterintuitive, but I always think about someone who said to me that as the team grew bigger, he had to employ somebody full time to do something that was taking him half an hour a day. And it's that sort of feeling like as the team grows, how do you stay productive? Basically, you can't get your money's worth.
Yeah, that's hard, isn't it? I remember in my previous life when I used to lead a team of people and manage an organization, I remember saying to my coach, like, why does it take people so long to do this? And she's, yeah, but you're the manager, you're the leader, you've got more skills, you've got more experience, so you're going to be able to do it more quickly. And I was like, oh, okay. But then it's a frustration there, isn't there? Especially if you're working with somebody and you're paying them by the hour. So I think it's about clarity of what needs to be achieved, really thinking about your induction and when you're onboarding people, making sure they've got all the information so that they can run with it. I hear a lot of founders say, I don't get much done in a day because I spend my day answering people's questions. And it's like, well, partly we have to remember that's part of the role, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's going to take time to get people up to speed. And we want to be patient about doing that. But equally, we want to set people up so that they can get running and go with it as quickly as possible. So making sure that you're not the gatekeeper, that your input isn't required for every kind of tiny decision. So giving people really clear parameters about this is what you're responsible for. This is where you can make a choice and a decision. And this is when you need to come back to me. I think that's a good way to get started.
So making it super, super clear what the guardrails are, like where they can operate.
Yeah. I talk to people about it being a fried egg. If you think of a picture of a fried egg sat in a frying pan,
Okay.
is the bit where you're saying to the person, within this space, you do what you like.
Right.
You make those decisions, you make those choices. And over time, that egg yolk is going to get bigger as you build trust, as you understand more about that person and how they work, and they understand more about you. The egg white is okay, if it goes into this space, we need to have a bit of a chat about it.
Yeah.
And the frying pan is don't go there.
Okay.
They're in a contract for £1,000 or whatever it might be that you don't want that person to do on your behalf in your business. So you've got those kind of 3 levels of clarity. I think that just helps people to understand where their responsibilities begin and end.
That's such I love that. The Friday. So what are some of the top tips? So if we're thinking about building a team, I definitely feel like for a lot of founders, this is one area that they feel really uncertain about. They feel, I love starting with it. So think about the fried eggs. So then are there any other tips in terms of actually building a team that works together as well? That's an important piece of it, isn't it?
It is. I was talking to a client this week who's setting up a business, and she's at that point where she's got 3 or 4 VAs and a social media person. And she's like, I spend my whole day communicating with people. But she communicates on lots of different platforms. Have one place where you do your communication that's not urgent, and one place where you agree this is where our urgent communication sits. If I need something from you today, Catherine, I'm going to call you and ask you because I need to know in the next hour. I'm not going to send you an email because you might not be in your inbox for a bit of time. So I think there's something about clarity around roles. What you don't want is duplication, because one person thinks, oh, that needs doing, I'll go and do that, and somebody else is working on the same thing at the same time. I see that often when people are sharing an inbox. Maybe 4 or 5 people are responding to incoming inquiries from customers, and that can lead to some duplication. So if you've got a situation like that, you might think, how do we share that? How do we split the load? Maybe that's my day of the week to respond to those inquiries. So just clarity. And then, if something falls through the net, fix it, but also come up with a plan about how it's not going to fall through the net next time. So that when you're evolving, constantly thinking, well, what went wrong? How do I fix it? But how do I make sure we do something different next time? So just thinking in your business, where are those things that might fall through the net? What if a customer asks for a refund, or there's a query about payments with a supplier? Who deals with that? Just having a really clear structure, I think, is really helpful. And then keeping in mind what the goal is. Some teams that I work with have kind of a daily huddle, like a 10-minute update on the numbers. What's your priority for today? Do you need help with that? I think that can help remind everybody what the priorities are and what they're working towards.
I like what you're saying there. So it's basically about having a look at the roles, making sure there's no duplication, making sure everyone's really super clear. And I think that's also important or would you say it's even more important as a business grows? Because often as a business grows, you're bringing in an additional role, and it may be that they're taking on a sort of piece that somebody else was doing, as well as a piece that is brand new. So you have to be super clear about, okay, this person is now doing X, Y, Z. Or actually, what I like to try and get people to think about is, what is that role, and properly scoping it out. But then you almost then have to go back to then the other roles in the team and saying, well, if I've taken this piece and put it over there, just make sure that other person knows that they can let go. That's no longer their responsibility. So don't get that duplication.
And what does that kind of handover process look like? If you think about a jigsaw, when you're putting the jigsaw together, you put that new piece in, but it touches on the other pieces at certain points. So what should those touch points be? How does that transfer happen?
Yeah.
And I think we carry around so much knowledge and expertise in our heads, and we kind of think, oh yeah, I knew that. What is it that person needs to get up to speed doing that role as quickly and effectively as they can? And I think it's really easy when somebody new joins the team, particularly in that new role that you're describing, they'll have questions, right? They go, why do we do it this way? And people say, look, that's just how we do it. Don't touch it. But that fresh pair of eyes that they bring is a new insight that often there's kind of value there. They're thinking, why don't they do it this way? That would be much easier. And people, we just do it that way because that's what we decided. It's okay. But there might be a better way. And that fresh pair of eyes sees that much more quickly than the existing team who have already been doing that for some time now. They've got used to it. That's the way it works.
Kristen, such a good point. I remember that when people come in, when I worked in bigger in corporate roles, it was almost like we embraced the fact that the person could look at things with an external
Yeah.
perspective. And sometimes, especially if they were more senior management, they were given like a sort of 3 to 4 week time period where they were just asked to literally observe and to make some thoughts and some recommendations and to generally just see it from that external perspective. So that's a really great point. So don't be too dismissive if you bring someone in and they say, oh, what about this? And to an extent, I think it's important as the founder to have that confidence that you're the one leading the way, as it were.
Yeah.
But at the same time, listening or getting that feedback, seeing
Yeah.
that external
Listen,
perspective.
yeah, and I think it can be hard when you've set something up from scratch and somebody comes in with a, oh, why don't you do it like this? It can be easy to be defensive. To, oh, well, I thought that was a really good idea. Or that's my baby. Why is somebody coming along and criticizing that? But it's not criticism. It's working towards that same goal of how do we continually improve this? How do we make it better? So yeah, just being prepared to listen to that with an open mind and then make a decision.
Yeah, sure. So then when we're talking about productivity again in a team, then as a founder, what can we do in order to really help the team perform by also being really clear yourself on what the areas of focus for the business?
Yeah, I think that's always a hard one, right? It's what's the focus? What's the direction that you want to travel in? So, for example, if a business is selling, I don't know, shampoo and conditioner, right? They've
Yeah.
got these amazing products, they're really lovely, and they've been out testing the market. They've maybe had some market stalls at like some funky markets and events, and they decide to stop doing that because they're selling less than 50, 100 units per time.
Yeah.
So if their goal is like, well, if we're going to go and do an event, we want to sell this much,
Mm.
and that might mean we need an event of this size or this kind of footfall, then the rest of the team need to know that. So they know what we're saying yes to, they know what we're saying no to. So just having a really clear, this is our focus, this is our direction, and it means we're saying no to the opportunities that look like this.
Mm-hmm.
A business is selling something and they start off on a market stall to test the market and see how that goes. And they're like, we've got some stuff on Etsy, we're selling some stuff online. Those two strategies are great, but they're going to want to build on those, right? They want to kind of experiment with new things. And if they say, actually, we tried that and we did it for a year and it didn't work, or even better, we did it for 3 months and it didn't work.
Yeah.
What's the new strategy? What does that get replaced with? So clarity, not just on the focus, but what does that mean? What do we say no to enable us to do that new thing? So perhaps that's saying we're going to be, I don't know, we're going to go to this big exhibition in London and we're going to have a stand and the footfall is going to be like 10,000 people are going to come past our stall in the course of the week or the day, rather than being out at the village market. It's clarity on the yes, but clarity on the no as well.
Which I suppose helps you as the founder then, because if you've got someone in who's doing, for example, okay, I've got one person and they're doing Pinterest and TikTok and all the rest of it, and therefore that's what I'm paying them to do. But actually, I've got someone in and I'm paying them to do it. But have I asked myself, if this is this the yes or this the no, or if I just fallen into this trap of, okay, I've got someone doing this thing. So would you say it's always worth then as the founder saying, okay, everyone who I've got here doing activities, am I absolutely sure this is part of the ongoing strategy?
Yeah, and being willing to revisit and revise that. It can be difficult, can't it, to track where the sales come from. But if you think, I don't know that thing is helping us,
Yeah.
then let's test out not using it for 6 months.
See what happens.
Whatever it might be, and see what happens. And being willing to pivot and change, as you have to do when your business is growing.
Yeah, for sure. And this brings me on to something that I think strikes fear into the heart of a lot of people who I work with, which is all about, so you've got this idea for your team, you've gone through, you've identified your role, you've identified your fried egg. I love that analogy. You feel really clear about where the business is going. You feel really clear about what everyone's doing as part of it. What do you do when the person that you've put into this role doesn't do what you want them to do, or you don't feel like they're really contributing to the productivity of the business overall? How do you have those difficult conversations? Because I think a lot of people I work with, their biggest fear is confrontation and having to actively manage people and it's something that sometimes even can hold them back from expanding because they just think then they'd have to manage somebody. And it's often that when you drill into it, it's that fear of those negative conversations. So what are some of your top tips around?
And I find negative conversations, they're so hard. Like when I first started managing people, like that was a real like fear, like you say. And I think there's two aspects to that. One is mindset, like your mindset as you go into that conversation. And the second is the behavior that you're seeing, the resulting behavior. So I think, if that's been going on for a while and you've had a few conversations about it, that's a trickier thing. But I think to start that conversation with a sense of curiosity, what's going on here? So you're not going into that conversation thinking, oh, I've got to tell this person off and then they've got to change their behavior. Going into that conversation with a view to learning what's going on here. This person's doing this, but I've asked them to do that. Like, why? So if you can go in and approach that as a conversation where you're looking to understand, I think that then becomes different. You can figure out a way together rather than thinking, oh, I need to tell this person it's going to be like this. Because they might have a part of the puzzle that you don't have. They might say, well, we tried doing it that way, but this thing happened and it all went wrong. Often that might not be the case, but if you can approach it with a sense of, I want to understand what's going on here and I want to understand what's going on with this individual and why they're behaving in this way, then you're more likely to come to a solution together. I know from a lot of my coaching experience, if somebody comes up with a solution themselves, they're much more likely to act on it rather than if they're just told what to do. And it will depend on their personality and their style, but very often, if people feel some ownership, that's going to make a big difference to their behaviors and their actions. But the first thing is approaching that conversation with curiosity and just being clear on what's not working. So we don't want to make that personal. We want to be able to say, okay, this is the thing that's not working for me. Or this is the thing that I've got questions or concerns about. Help me to understand what's going on. And it might be that they're like, oh yeah, I've been wondering why we do it that way, or doing it in a way that I'm not sure is the right way. And then you can have a conversation together about how that moves forward, and always a time scale to come back and evaluate. Let's try this. What do you think we should try? You don't want a team of people who, whenever they have a problem, they don't think for themselves. They just come to you as the founder to get that problem solved, because then you bottleneck and you just spend all your time firefighting. So if you can involve them in a conversation that helps you to understand the problem from their perspective, you can share what your perspective is and say, okay, how do we solve this? It might be, they're responsible for shipping the goods out, and you've got on your website that people will receive their products within 3 to 5 days, but it's taking 10. That's not okay. So you're looking to find out what's going on, what's happening, and work with the person to solve that problem. That's always going to be the starting point. If you then go back and that problem isn't being solved and they're still doing the behavior that they were doing before, it's pointing that out. This isn't what we need. And sometimes things don't work out and people have to part company, and you don't want it to get to that point. But if it does get to that point, like, that's the right thing for you and your business. And not shying away from that. And that's hard, but it's definitely worth doing. I can think of times where when I ran an organization that involved 15, 20 people, sometimes it didn't work out. And you approach the conversation with curiosity. You try and figure out what the business needs. And is that person a match at this time? It might just be it's not the right time. It's not the right role. And you have to have some honest conversations about that.
Well, I suppose that, I like the way you say, it's not personal. It's about what the business needs. And I suppose the benefit of you having seen it over a number of years with larger teams is that I think probably the first time you have to have those kind of conversations, it can be really difficult. But if you keep going and you keep going through it, you do just realize that it's not personal. I always think that the interviewing process, it really, I've been so many people over the years, but it really helped me understand that when I'm being interviewed, or, back in the days when I was going for interviews, then how not personal it was. It's not really about, oh, this person seems nice or not nice, although there is definitely that team fit element. but it was about, are they right for this role right now for what we need? And it really helped me understand the sort of objectivity of it, really. And I think that it's the same with team management. If you manage enough people, then you do start to get this sense of, okay, actually, it's not a personal thing. But then it can feel super personal. If it's literally just you and them, or you, them, and a small number of other people, it can be really hard to pull the personal out of it. But I like that. Just ask yourself, what does the business need right now? Is this the right fit for it?
And I think recruitment is interesting that you touched on that. Like, recruiting to values, I think, is really important. What are the values for you and your business? What behaviors do you want to see? If it's really important to you, I'm trying to think of an example, that people are positive, not in a denying when something's gone wrong kind of way, but in a let's find a solution to this challenge. How do we approach it and learn from it? If that's the kind of mindset you want, that's the mindset you need to recruit for, and have that in mind in that kind of recruitment process. And that can take time and trial and error, and it doesn't always work.
Yeah, but it's starting with that in mind. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. How do I want someone to behave in a crisis? What behaviors do I want to see when things go wrong?
right.
And thinking, how does that fit with our business values? And if somebody's just starting out and it's the founder and they're recruiting their first person, they probably don't have a set of values, because it's just them and they don't need that. So that's the time to start thinking, how do I want my people to show up to work every day? What behaviors do I want them to see, particularly if they're going to be interacting with customers?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So we talked a lot about team, but let's come back to the founder themselves for a moment to wrap things up. So we talked about the idea of focus and being productive. So what are some of the ways that founders can use that sort of focus to try and help with their stress and overall well-being?
Yeah, I was talking to a prospective client a few days ago who said, I did a coaching program where they said, I've just got to put more hours in. And I was like, when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling overwhelmed, we don't make good decisions. So I think, looking after yourself, thinking about your well-being, resting, taking breaks, those things are really important, especially at the times in your business where you think, I can't do that. Like, that's the time where you really need it. And that helps to give you a bit more clarity, to step away, get some perspective. But really having in mind, what are the goals? What is it that I want to focus on at the moment? What's driving the business forward? And making sure that you're doing something towards that every day.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the one thing I can do today? If you write on your to-do list, get more clients, sell more stuff, get more customers, that's not going to help you move forward. I like to talk about what's next. What's the next action that you're going to take? So if you say, I'm going to find 100 new customers, like, how are you going to do that? What's the thing? If I'm watching you, what bless you do? So it might be, I'm going to look at Catherine's website, or I'm going to listen to her podcast and get some ideas. I'm going to download some of her resources to help me figure out where to start. So that's what I'm going to see you do. So that's what you put on your list. That's the thing you need to work on today. And when you've done that thing, you can tick it off. And our brains like that sense of moving forward and ticking things off. We get a little rush of dopamine in our brains. Some people even put stuff on their to-do list that they've done already because it feels nice.
Just they can tick it off. Yeah.
So it's that sense of, if you can break it down into what's next.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you tick that what's next off, you then, okay, what's the next? What's next? And that helps to give you momentum, but making sure you're ticking those things off daily towards that main focus, but not at the expense of important things like sleep and rest and eating. Because actually, when you're short on all that stuff, that's when the wheels fall off.
It's almost like what your non-negotiables are.
Yeah. And being really clear on that and having boundaries, it makes it easier to say no. A few months ago, I had a client who said, I've got a meeting on Monday morning at 9:00. Can you send me a proposal before 9:00 on Monday morning? And I was like, it's 4:30 on Friday. And I was like, I don't work the weekend. So she was like, but you could just do that for me over the weekend. I was like, do you know what? I'll get it to you by 10:30 on Monday morning. But I'm not working over the weekend to do it. Don't do weekends. Doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I think that takes I think that's the really tricky thing when you first start your business. You're almost so determined to get sales at any cost that you're just like, yeah, okay. And it takes a while for you to get to the point where you go, oh, that's actually not productive in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a question there about, do I really want to work long term with that person?
Mm.
They don't expect me to, yeah, to ditch my plans for the weekend. And if I'd have had a weekend where I didn't have anything on, I might have thought about it. But that wasn't that kind of weekend. So yeah, that wasn't going to work for me. So I think, yeah, being clear on what your boundaries are and being firm about that is really helpful in terms of that kind of well-being. And that gives you a bit more headspace and ability to think critically about things.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Hayley. It's a fascinating chat. Do you want to tell everyone how they can find out more about working with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really easy to find on LinkedIn. My name's Hayley Watts. My website is inspirefor.co.uk. And there's details there on my coaching program and my 6-month focus program to help business owners focus on the stuff that matters the most.
Amazing. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Why not drop me a note on Instagram at Resilient Retail Club? Let me know what you thought about today's episodes and let me know how you find managing your team, making them the most productive as possible. Don't forget as well to head over to the show notes and get Hayley's details, find out about getting in contact with her. And of course, head over to Retail Roar, that's retail, roar.co.uk, and grab your free ticket for our amazing free online summit with the most incredible lineup. Go check out the lineup and grab your free ticket today.